Hello YouTube, Kevin here for Superpower Broadcasting. If you read the title of this video, you will see that Tankie Tulsi Gabbard and I agree on something. This is unusual. Well, you'll see why. She was speaking at a recent forum and she made the argument that the only alternative to diplomacy is war. I agree with that. If you follow my channel and my work, you will see where this is going. Of course, the only alternative to diplomacy is war. That is, without a question, obvious. She stated that she is willing to sit down with the most brutal of dictators in order to meet them on their terms, in essence. Now, she didn't say that. She said negotiate, but we know who she is. We know her style. We know that that is inevitably the synthesis that will result. In order to save or prevent any of her fellow soldiers from being killed. Well, here's the thing. Well, it is true that the only alternative to diplomacy is war, and I agree with her on that. She says that as if war is a bad thing. Well, war is a lesser evil. War is inevitable. If you follow my channel, you know I talk about this quite a bit, that it is not a matter of whether we do war or not. It is a matter of when we do war and on whose terms. Example of the case of Iran. That is a very pernicious imperialist empire at this point. They are seeking hegemony over the Middle East. They are seeking to destabilize the Middle East. They have two objectives in the world. Well, three, but the third kind of goes in with the second. The first objective is regional hegemony. They do not like the United States being the hegemon in the Middle East. They want to be the hegemon in the Middle East. This harks back to thousands of years of Persian imperialism. They would like to continue this. Well, that right there puts us at a conflict. Those are opposing aims. Second, they seek destabilization of the Middle East. Now, this can seem contradictory, of course, because if you're the hegemon, hegemonies tend to be stable. They tend to seek stability. Why would they seek instability? Well, Iran has two interests. They have an imperial interest, but they also have an economic interest. They want the glory of having the empire, but they also want to have high oil prices. So how do you keep oil prices high? Well, you cause as much chaos as you can in the region because so much oil is produced from there. It is the case that Saudi Arabia has a much lower cost of production than Iran does. In fact, oil could be at about $10 a barrel and Saudi Arabia would be profitable. Iran needs closer to $80 a barrel to be profitable. They are just so much more mountainous terrain. They're not as easy to extract oil. They don't have the same lucrative contracts from very advanced Western companies that have expertise in oil drilling. They rely upon high oil prices to render their inefficient oil production methods profitable. If oil prices are too low, they need to stir crap up so that they will return to a level at which they can make money. So, well, on the one hand, they do want control of the Middle East. They also need instability in the Middle East. And so this half sort of approach that they have is they want hegemony over the Shia territories, Iraq, Syria, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and at the same time, they want to cause maximum instability in the Sunni territories and in Israel, of course. So these are of course, the two primary objectives of the Iranian dictatorship. The third one is to destroy Israel, to annihilate Israel. Ahmadinejad was on the record. He wanted to annihilate Israel. It's apparent that if they ever acquired nuclear weapons, they would seek to nuke Israel. That is without question. So the only issue becomes, well, it's a matter of time. So there is no question as to whether or not war with Iran will become a thing at some point. It is going to happen. The only question at hand is how many people will die and on whose terms will the war begin? Because if the war begins on America's terms, fewer people will die than if we wait for the war to begin on Iran's terms, once Iran feels they have a comfortable amount of nuclear weapons. So we can see this in North Korea. If Bill Clinton had taken out North Korea in the 1990s, North Korea never would have acquired nuclear weapons. Perhaps a couple million people would have died in that war. Remember, about 3 million people died in the 1950 to 53 Korean War. 2 million is probably reasonable given 40,000 artillery pieces along the DMZ that North Korea has, the DMZ that North Korea has with the South. What we're going to see is that if it happens to be the case that war breaks out with North Korea now, it will be on their terms. Many more millions will die because they have more advanced weaponry now. They have nuclear weapons. They may use nuclear weapons against Japan. They may use nuclear weapons against the United States if the United States intervenes. Or, even worse, they might have so many nuclear weapons when they start the war that America will decide that it's not worth it to intervene, and they will take the South and they'll just use nukes. They'll just use the nukes as a deterrent. They won't even use the nukes. And they'll win the war. And 50 million South Koreans will become slaves to Kim overnight. That will be an absolute hellscape. That will be a disaster. 50 million people are stuck on the southern tip of the northern rooted peninsula. That does not end well. That is some serious purging and gulag crap that's going to happen then in the years following Kim's victory, right? So, war... Gabbard talks about war as if war is a choice, as if war can somehow be averted, as if war could somehow magically never happen again if we just follow her way. But of course the reality is, and we've learned these lessons dating back to the 1930s with Neville Chamberlain, that if you appease a dictator once, he will take a mile. If you appease a dictator again, he will take 1,000 miles. And this will continue on and on until he is ready to do war, and the war will happen anyway. And all the appeasement attempts that you made to secure peace only bought you a few years, which didn't even buy you an advantage, because now he's built up so many more forces in that time. And you're only slightly stronger than you were before. It is an absolute miscalculation for a superpower such as the United States to give Iran or North Korea a moment extra to build up their defenses. Because each moment that goes by, America increases its military strength by, say, X%. But each moment that we leave these regimes to their own devices, they are building up at such a higher rate. It might be 15 or 20x, whatever America is. If we give them a year, that's not buying us time. That's literally just giving them, say, 30 more nuclear weapons. Whereas for us, if we have 8,000 and we add 30, okay. But North Korea has about 100 crude devices. If they get even 10, that is a massive multiple to their arsenal. It will greatly increase the death toll if a war breaks out. It is just such a disaster. It's such an erroneous way of thinking on Tulsi Gabbard's part, on Tankie Tulsi's part. Because her way of looking at this is the exact same lens through which Neville Chamberlain saw the world, which is that if we simply just give Hitler everything, then we don't have to fight Hitler. How did that work out? It bought you a few years of procrastination, and then instead of a couple million people died taking out Hitler, 50 million people died when Hitler started the war. So yay, you delayed the war. It's not even that's my point, is that you're not even delaying the war. You're increasing the casualty count every year you wait, because the enemy gets that much stronger. They are gaining from time more than we gain from time. This is a fact. And when Tankie Tulsi Gabbard comes out and makes these statements, we have to remember, of course, that she's looking at the world not from the same perspective as I am, or as you may be seeing the world, which is this lens of liberalism as a moral universalist good, as a virtue. She sees the world in a moral relativist terms. And this is giving her the benefit of the doubt, mind you. Because if I wanted to represent her position as I think it probably actually is, I would say that she believes in Baathism, that she believes in the Iranian system, that she believes in Putin and what he's doing. But I don't necessarily have the evidence to say that. I don't want to get into any sort of slanderous territory here. It's very much possible that she does prefer America's system, but that she just doesn't believe that it should be applied to the rest of the world. It's possible that she believes in democracy in America. That is fully possible. Of course, it's worth remembering that just 2.5 years ago, she was calling gays homosexual terrorists and extremists. So, let's just keep that in mind, right? I'm very dubious of her progressivism. I mean, her support base is 4chan boys. It's libertarians. It's Jordan Peterson fanboys. It's Stefan Molyneux fanboys. It's, the people that read Arthur Schopenhauer, the people who read Alexander Dugin, unironically, and the profound Christian fundamentalists. They are her base of support. I can tell you they're not progressives. The progressives are supporting people like Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren. I can tell you I have a lot of issues with Elizabeth Warren. I have a lot of issues with Bernie Sanders. They are also isolationists. They also wouldn't do anything about Assad. But you don't see them going around and doing the same level of appeasement as Tankie Tulsi. You don't see Bernie Sanders going out there and defending and talking about how misunderstood and how much of a victim Bashar the Butcher is. You just don't see it. Now, sure, he wouldn't do anything about Bashar Assad. That's just true. He wouldn't. But at least there isn't this extra level of rhetorical apologia. He at least acknowledges that Assad is scum, right? Tulsi Gabbard, if she's forced to say it, she'll say that he's brutal, that he's killed people. But she's putting out all this stuff saying that he didn't gas anybody. As if that's somehow relevant here. Because here's the thing, of course. Sure, he may not have done that. That might have been, a no good evil USA false flag, right? There's like a 1 in a million chance that happened. Irrelevant. You know why? Because he killed 600,000 people with conventional means. He slaughtered Syria with conventional means. The fact that he may have gassed 1,000 extra people on top of that, okay, yeah, it's weapons of mass destruction. That's egregious. That obviously has to be punished, right? That obviously you can't do that. But 600,000 versus 601,000, that's not the difference between making you an innocent, virtuous, hero and making you this evil villain that we got to take out. No, you kill 600,000 people with conventional means. I don't care if you gas another 1,000 because you're already my enemy at that point, right? But as, of course, Tankie Tulsi Gabbard said, Assad is not her enemy. She literally said that. She said that Assad is not an enemy of America because he doesn't directly threaten America. In other words, you can do anything. You can butcher your own people. You can kill 60 million people. Screw the whole 600,000 thing. Let's say you're Putin and you kill 60 million Russians. You take a cue from Stalin and you do another 60 million. That's cool. That's totally cute because you're not a threat to America. Unbelievable moral duplicity, unbelievable moral degeneracy. And as I mentioned, she's a moral relativist. In other words, there is no universal good in her view. Human rights are just a myth. They're just a liberal construction. They don't have any merit. They don't have any usefulness in the world. And in fact, she would probably say that they hurt the world because now that we have conceptions of human rights, it makes wars for the Jews more likely, right? It makes, white boys dying for Israel more likely, as her supporters would put it. Now, she hasn't used explicitly anti-Semitic language like that, but it says something that all of her support base that I get into arguing with always cites the Jews, statements such as, Tulsi Gabbard isn't anti-American, she's anti-Jew, that kind of stuff to defend her. Like, unbelievable, right? Like bottom of the barrel. What's another one? Oh, she's not an isolationist, she's a non-interventionist. Another euphemism. In other words, we know that isolationism sounds bad, so we'll say non-interventionist, even though that also sounds bad, because we know that people don't like Assad. I mean, keep in mind, she's only polling at about 1%, right? She's got about 130,000 donors. By the way, I'm going to do a video on that. If you're one of those people, wow, you really need to take a look at your life. And, well, your families must be so proud you gave money to a dictator apologist. But here's the thing, right? So, with Tankie Tulsi Gabbard, when she comes out and says all this, and she talks about how she's willing to sit down with the most brutal dictators, she's not even just talking about Assad. She's talking about Putin. She's talking about Kim. She's talking about all of them. There's nothing she's willing to fight for. There's nothing. There's nobody in the world that matters to her except for, her white males in America, her fan base, her base of support. Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. And the thing is, she's worse than Trump. She's 100% worse than Trump. Because at least Trump has diverse opinions around him. At least he has John Bolton and Mike Pompeo around him. Even if he never takes their advice, at least they're there. If she became president, she would literally invite the propagandists from the Assad regime over to D.C. to have dinner with her. She would have Kremlin Kyle as her media spokesperson. He'd go from running secular talk to being at the White House, giving Tulsi's propaganda day in, day out. She would have Glenn, the left's Dave Rubin Greenwald on, and acting maybe as the White House lawyer, for example. She would have Noam Chomsky. She would have Mike Gravel. She would have the most insidious people in her administration. And there wouldn't be a single voice of reason there. At least with Trump, there is a voice of reason around. There is John Bolton. There is Mike Pompeo. With her, it would all be ISO-cucks. Every single one of them would be an ISO-cuck who has a hard-on for Vladimir Putin and sees him as the strong leader, as this, this hero of Christianity or whatever. It would be an absolute disaster. She would be the worst of the worst. She would be the worst American president. And that's not even hyperbole. She would be the worst. She single-handedly, if she had one term, could turn America from a superpower into a puppet state. She is the most destructive fifth column. And when she says this, let's just bear in mind here, right, the full context of this statement that she was giving. She said that she would meet with the most brutal dictators and compromise with them and forfeit America's standing in the world to them if it meant that it would save an American soldier from dying in a war. Think about that. Now imagine if this statement was given in 1936. Imagine if this statement was given in 1939. Imagine if it was given in 1940 or 41. Imagine that. The same statement, but instead of in the context of Assad, imagine it's in the context of Hitler. Obviously, she would have the same position of the American first isolationists. She would say, Hitler's just making Germany great again. He's just doing his thing in Europe. He's not an enemy of America. She would say that because she's saying that about Putin and she's saying that about Assad right now. She would sit down with Hitler. Let's just keep that 100% real. There's absolutely no question about it. She has defended the Taliban. She's defended Assad. She's defended the Ayatollah. She's defended Vladimir Putin. She's defended Kim. It is no stretch. It is absolutely... It would be insane to think that she wouldn't defend Hitler. That would be a crazy take on things. If you thought that she wouldn't. That somehow Hitler's just this dictator that she would fight. I mean, let's just 100% keep this real, right? She would absolutely conduct apologetics for the Nazis if this was the 1930s or 40s right now. 100% she would do it. And I shouldn't even have to make those comparisons, of course. I just do that to make things clear, to really drive home the point of how disgusting, how vile, how filthy she is. How much of a disgusting piece of human filth this woman is. How she's willing to, in her selfish interest, whatever she sees coming from this, she sees it as the right thing to do to give dictators free rein to slaughter wholesale their countries. Unbelievably grotesque, unbelievably appalling, disgusting human filth. The thing is, it's not just that, of course. I shouldn't even have to make the Hitler comparison. I shouldn't even have to make the Stalin comparison, because she defends Stalin too. Assad alone has killed 600,000 people so that he can hold on to his palace, his yacht, and his Benz. Think about that. When he's driving around in his car or whatever, he has his chauffeur driving him around in his limo. Think about how many tens of thousands of Syrians died so that that limo could travel a few miles. Unbelievable. It is paved with bones, the infrastructure of Syria at this point. His regime is founded upon death. It is a tyranny of fear and terror. And she's out here defending him and going out of her way to defend the most brutal tyrants in the world right now. Meanwhile, she lives at Cushy in Hawaii. It would be one thing if she went over there and lived there permanently, and not just in a cushy hotel, but actually lived like a regular Syrian under Assad. That would be one thing if she defended him like that. But no, she's going to be a coward and live in the West and defend him from her little armchair. Unbelievably grotesque isolationism. Unbelievably grotesque. And sure, she can put lipstick on a pig and call it non-interventionism. That's just as a disgusting term in my mind. That's just as egregious in my mind. But I know that some people see it as more favorable, that it doesn't bear the same connotations as isolationism. Because, of course, the original isolationists, they sided with Hitler, and they sided with Germany in World War I. Like Lauren Southern, she has aestheticized and glorified them. The original isolationists have that connotation of Nazi apologists, right? So I get that that's seen as a worse term. Non-interventionism needs to be associated with supporting a man who's killed 600,000 people to hold on to a yacht. Mind you, these people, they call themselves progressives. They talk about it having an issue with wealth inequality in America. You know where there's a profound wealth inequality? Where everybody in Syria is getting gassed or murdered, living in utter poverty and rubble. Well, their dear leader is out there in his freaking yacht with his Benz and his palace atop the mansion, like up atop a hill, separated away from the peasants, right? They are the most unequal countries in the world, North Korea, Syria, Russia. I mean, you want to talk about wealth inequality? Even a poor American isn't living in rubble and having all of their fruits of their labor and their pursuit of happiness and liberty extinguished, so that the dear leader can ride around in a yacht and a Benz and have his his swaggy palace and everything. She literally, it's like the movie The Interview. She went over there and fell in love with his palace. She went over there and was giving the cake and the feasts and everything by the elites. And she fell in love, and she saw the banners on the buildings of the peoples all singing praise of Assad, and she thinks all the Syrian people love Assad. She's either unbelievably gullible, which would be disgusting because she's a member of Congress, or she knows what's going on, and she still chooses to side with Assad. Now, she has indicated, she has given the pretense that he is a brutal dictator. Whether she believes that or not is an open question. Maybe she's just saying that because she knows that she has to or whatever to try to get her message across. But she might be aware of it. She may well be aware of the slaughter that's going on in Syria. If she is and she's still defending him, that just makes her that much worse of a person, right? But she's already absolute filth. She's already the worst of the worst. She's already the bottom of the barrel. She's worse than Trump. And Trump sings praises of Kim and sings praises of Putin. She takes it to the Glenn Greenwald level. She's absolutely unbelievably grotesque. She is repugnant. She is a moral... she is vile. She is absolutely disgusting. And with Syria, I don't need to make the Hitler comparisons. I shouldn't even have to draw a comparison to any other situation in history. There have been horrible genocides so that great leaders could hold on to their wealth, right? I shouldn't even have to cite previous examples. Syria alone is disgusting. You know how many people have died over there so that this guy can have his precious little palace? I mean, it's just pathetic. I mean, think about it. There are videos put out by the Syrian army of, these young kids and everything saying how, they lay down their souls for Bashar. It's all about Bashar and God or whatever. The same stuff that you saw when Hitler was desperate in the late the late end of the war in 1945, and he went out there and talked about how all these kids, the 12-year-olds that he was giving guns to, were doing God's work defending him. No, all that they were doing was being wasted. Their lives, their youth, everything, the potential was wasted. All the potential of the Syrian people. Think about this. It's a country of 28 million people. 8 million have had to flee to Europe. 600,000 or so are dead. I mean, think about it this way. Even if all those 600,000 people were going to die within a year of natural causes, he took 600,000 years of human life away so that he could hold on to his limo and his yacht. This man is disgusting. This man needs to be put to death. This man needs to be shot in a ditch. That's what should happen to Assad. And if I was the president of the United States, I would round him up and I would do to him what I did to Saddam. Except I would let I would let the people's mob loose on him. I thought Saddam got too easy when they had his little trial and they hanged him. They let him off. He shouldn't have been hung. He should have got the Gaddafi treatment. They should have let the mob loose on him. They should have taken him to the back, shoved a pipe up his behind and shot him in a ditch. That's what should have happened, right? I mean, it's unbelievably grotesque because, again, Assad's done that to 600,000 people. He absolutely deserves it, 100%. And Tankie Tulsi Gabbard, she's living out here in the West. She is worse than the people in his own regime that are defending him. If you work for Syria State TV and sing Assad praise every day on state TV, I have more sympathy for you. I have more empathy for you than I do for Gabbard. You know why? Because you're a hostage. If you say anything that's not praise, you and your family get taken to the back and shot in a ditch. So I understand it, why you would sing praise of Assad. That makes all the sense in the world. And I hold you at no fault after we get rid of him. But Tankie Tulsi Gabbard, she lives in the West. She doesn't have to say all of this. Nobody's holding a gun to her head and her family. But she still chooses to defend this guy. Why? Because she claims to hate war. No, she doesn't hate war. Let's just be clear 100% about that. She doesn't hate war. Because in her version of peace, 600,000 Syrians still die. And more die until Assad consolidates power. And then after he consolidates power, he rounds up everybody that was on the other side of the war and has them either taken to the labor camps or sets some examples and purges maybe 100 or 200,000 of them and has them shot and so on, and makes a scene of it every year to set an example that there should never be a rebellion again. He'll Hunger Games the country. That's absolutely what will happen. But in her view, it's peaceful. Why? Because she has a Westphalia fetish. She believes that sovereignty is more important than humanity. She's disgusting. I mean, I don't know how I can make it any more clear. She's the worst of the worst. She's absolute filth. She is a disgusting person. And her dictator apologetics, unfortunately, they don't just stop with her. Her followers, of course, believe the same crap. Russia Today puts out this filth constantly. Every day they spread this toxicity into our political discourse. The alt-right agrees with her. All the anti-Semites, the 4chan boys, they love her. They see her as this, this anti-Semitic hero. They see her as, she's gonna stick it to the Jews or whatever. She's a disgrace. She's an absolute disgrace. But it's not just her. Isolationists, non-interventionists, if you identify with that crowd, you are human filth. Because here's the thing. I know most people that are in that camp have never really considered the alternative. They just think of neocons as a meme. They don't really think that neocons are a real thing. Or they've never heard of liberal hawks before. And that's fine. I get it. You're not evil or anything if you've never really seriously considered intervention. But I got news for you. Intervention is real. Intervention is good. Tankie Tulsi Gabbard talks about war as if anything but war. We can have 100 million people die, but as long as we don't have war. Sure. No. War is good. War is nipping things in the bud. War is proactive. Her foreign policy isn't even procrastination. Obama's was procrastination. She never wants to even do anything. There's not even a pretense that she'll ever do anything. So it's not really procrastination if your plan is to never do anything for eternity. That's not even procrastination. That is just simply defeat. That is surrender. That is forfeiture of all morality and all of our values of liberalism to the most despotic and brutal thugs and bullies in the history of the world, such as Assad, Bashar the Butcher, as I call him. Oh, he's just this feeble eye doctor. He wouldn't hurt a fly. No, he's killed 600,000 people to hold onto his yacht. He deserves death. He deserves a brutal death. And his apologists in the West, they should be ashamed of themselves. I mean, it should be absolutely socially reprehensible for someone such as Tankie Tulsi Gabbard to admit their views publicly like this. It's disgusting. I mean, we've seen how this movie ends in World War II. It doesn't end well. If you wait a few years, you go from having a death toll of maybe 1 million to 50 million. In the case of Syria, I'm not saying that Assad's going to kill 50 million people, mind you, but that's her stance with Russia. That's her stance with North Korea. That's her stance everywhere. It's not just a problem with Syria. She doesn't want to do anything about anyone. She wants to let the enemies of America run rampant over the world and surrender all of our interests, all of the liberal order that's been fought for the better half of a century. She wants to forfeit it to the illiberal despots. She is a disgrace. So thank you for watching, YouTube.